This psychological phenomenon will make or break your performance review and the salary increase, bonus, and RSU grants that follow. What is this phenomenon? And what psychology hacks can make it work for you? I'm breaking it all down in today's video. Obviously, you're wondering, what is the psychology at play? Let's start by demonstrating the psychology with a completely non-work related example. What are 5 movies that you've watched? Take a moment to list them. You can write them down, think it through in your head, jot it down on your phone, whatever works for you. Now tell me, are these your favorite movies? Movies you watched as a child? Or a list of the most awful movies you've ever seen? Chances are, it's none of the above. In fact, I can almost guarantee that the first movie that you listed was the last movie that you've seen. Why am I so confident in saying that? It's because of recency bias. This is a cognitive bias that, summarized by Wikipedia, gives greater importance to the most recent event. You can see how this might come into play during performance evaluations. Your manager is likely to overweight your recent accomplishments when they're doing your performance review. If you think about your past performance reviews, you probably noticed how your manager referred to recent examples and recent scenarios in your performance discussion instead of work and especially accomplishments that occurred earlier in the year or earlier in the performance cycle. This does not doom you to a mediocre performance rating and a meager salary increase if your big wins were months ago, because there are psychological hacks and a few strategies you can leverage to make recency bias work for you. The first thing that you can do to take advantage of recency bias in your performance review is in the 6 to 8 weeks leading up to the performance evaluation cycle, do your best to make a strategic high impact, because the best way to use recency bias is to feed it. This doesn't mean that you need to embark on a complicated and time-consuming strategic high impact project and hope to get it done just in the nick of time to wow your boss. In fact, I encourage you to identify the fastest and highest impact wins. It's not as challenging as it sounds. Simply look to your unique awesomeness quotient, your UAQ, and find the nexus of where it meets your boss's priorities. That's where they're paying attention. I do give detailed steps on how to do this in my Career Glow Up book, which you can pre-order now and get additional bonuses for buying it early. Check out the description box, I'll have more info. On the other hand, if you had a major accomplishment or a really big win earlier in the year, you can boost it now to capitalize on your former success. Is there a way to expand that win? Can you build on top of it, operationalize the process to amplify the impact, or find an anecdote of its continued payoff? This will essentially refresh that accomplishment, bring it into current time, and allow you to take advantage of recency bias. Those methods are going to be the most effective. However, you might be scrambling. If you're too close in and you don't have time to do this before your performance review cycle starts, there's a very simple strategy that you can use to take advantage of recency bias. In fact, even if you did the last 2 things, you should still do this anyway. Send your boss a list of your biggest accomplishments and milestones. A lot of professionals I know react as soon as I say this. I don't want to brag about myself. This is helping your boss out while using recency bias. One thing you need to understand is how time-consuming performance evaluations are for managers. It takes so much time and so much work. Because your manager, in an effort to provide a thorough and fair evaluation for each member on their team, is trying to create lists of those accomplishments and contributions. They're digging through their notes, system metrics, etc., when you can just tell them. You can send them an email and say something to the effect of, I know performance evaluations are about to kick off. Since I keep a log of my biggest wins and accomplishments, I thought it might make your life easier if I shared this with you. Don't share your weekly wins for the last 52 weeks in this email. That's gonna be a little bit too much. Instead, provide a curated bullet list of your top moments. Then click send. You can also include your allies and advocates in this process. Now is the time for the best client that you have to send a note to your manager talking all about the positive impact that you've made and praising you for maintaining that really crucial business relationship. If you happen to receive or have received one of these directly, now is also the time to pass it on. I also highly suggest building up that karma. Send some of those praise notes to managers of people that you work with who are doing a great job and smashing it out of the park. Who knows, some of them might come back to you. Reciprocity is another psychological hack, and it does mean that some of them might come back to you, but don't do it for that reason. Beyond recency bias, there's another cognitive bias that we can use, especially when you're prepping that email to your boss before they write your performance evaluation: primacy bias. This is the bias where information that is communicated first is given more emphasis. Which is why if you find yourself in a situation where you need to communicate both good news and bad news, you must lead with the good news. Of course, this should come into factor at all times in all conversations, but especially when you've made a mistake, have a problem, or are communicating a win. The first part of what you say is going to be what gets emphasized. And way too many professionals are tampering down and disqualifying their wins. This isn't a big deal, but I just closed a major account. Hits much differently than, I just closed a major account. It might not be a big deal. During your performance review period, you want to maximize primacy bias. When you send that recap email, when you do your self-evaluation, when you are communicating progress, accomplishments, or milestones to your boss, and as we mentioned, in general. There is another psychological hack that we can use to either leverage or negate recency bias: anchoring. Anchoring is the tendency to use a first impression as a reference point or an anchor for future decision making. During the performance review process, your manager is probably going to look at your self-evaluation. In fact, they might look to how you rated yourself to determine how they are going to rate you. This is where anchoring bias comes into play. According to HBR, men rate themselves 33% higher than equally performing women, setting the anchor lower for women during the performance review process. We can't have that. Therefore, this is where you need to channel your inner Chad energy. Your self-evaluation is a designed opportunity for you to promote your potential, your accomplishments, and stage yourself for a phenomenal performance review and salary increase. Instead of diminishing yourself and your opportunity for career advancement and devaluing yourself and your contributions along with your pay increase. In fact, I want you to go and watch this video right now to perfect your self-evaluation and stage yourself for an exceeds expectations rating to maximize your pay increase and bonus payouts.